So oftentimes people find my channel because they're looking for games to play with their friends. That's kind of my gimmick. I talk about online titles, I'm talking about cooperative games, or even sometimes competitive, but it's just generally games you can queue up with a friend or jump into a world and explore together. And yeah, sometimes, maybe most of the time, these topics resolve into talking about massively multiplayer titles. And I think that's mostly due to the fact that MMOs have probably the largest variety, just, a myriad of ways to actually play with people in the world. So, if that's jumping in and making some frenemies as a solo ganker in some games, literally co-oping through certain quests or certain, storylines, maybe it's forming an entire guild, what have you. Most MMOs have probably the most ways to play with friends versus any other singular experience that I can really think of. That's just sort of their gimmick. But are they actually the best? Just because they have a quantity of ways you can interact with your friends, does that mean it's actually the best quality, the highest quality, the most in-depth, and really, in terms of game design, truly rewarding and good? And when it comes to playing with your friends, the social experience, and just the ease of access, and everything that you could really quantify for is something good to do with your friends, is that really MMOs? Are they really the best? Is that really what we're looking for? That's what I want to ask and answer. Are massively multiplayer games the best games to play with friends? Are MMOs with friends really the way to go? And I'm asking this question for really a very specific reason. And that's because this channel, Skylent Games, my name is Skylent. Hello, welcome to the channel. Keep the hype alive, like and subscribe, all that good stuff. But yeah, I have every incentive to play these kind of games because clearly this is sort of my niche. I have a community that clearly wants to play these games with me. And at the same time, I'm passionate. I like these games. I love these games. I have every incentive to play these kind of games. And I have a lot of free time. Now, I do feel that with I make music and I'm always taking classes. I'm trying to get side gigs. I'm trying to get some video editor gigs, blah, blah, blah. Email me if you need some videos edited or whatever. I'm always trying to do more, right? Fill up that free time. But regardless, I'm very flexible. I'm probably the most flexible and free person on the planet that isn't completely jobless. But because actually I do make some money, that actually gives me more freedom. So I have really a great, perfect balance and incentive, in my life to play these kind of games. That's just me personally. And yet, I still have tremendous difficulty actually finding people to play these kind of games. And if I do find them, the time to play with them, or them, to kind of sync our schedules all together to find the right kind of game to play, and then the right time to play that right part of the game in a certain way with certain people. Because when you have a game that has a myriad of ways to play it with a myriad of different types of people, and of course an evolving, breathing world, so playing at different times changes how you play them. Because of all of these factors, that go into this, it actually makes it more difficult to really enjoy the game. And I think immediately by me saying that, you guys are starting to kind of get it, right? Where a lot of the times I bet you default where you could play an MMO with some friends and jump in and, imagine all these epic quests and you imagine all these cool things you could do with people and do with cool games or whatever. But really, you probably default and just go back and play, queue up for League of Legends, or you queue up for Apex, or you queue up for, a different game, play a little bit of Overwatch or some Rocket League, or maybe you jump into a co-op game, and you run through a single storied experience. MMOs aren't that static, and that's actually kind of a problem. The experience you have with MMO, double-edged sword, because it's kind of why we play them, is very organic and dynamic, and it's very meta. So depending on when you play, when you can play, who you play with, how they play, and how the community itself is sort of digesting and consuming the game. All these crazy unfactorable factors that go into playing an MMO just make it very difficult to actually engage with your friends. And I'm gonna give you a couple examples, okay? Not only, I think, is there a trend of MMOs being more single player oriented, and not only is there a trend for MMOs to kind of decentivize cooperation, actually, and more like MMOs are more about kind of engaging with strangers and maybe even making friends, but playing with your friends. Do they actually create environments to puzzle or riddle, and be truly cooperative, like you would imagine a game like Overcooked, or, a true co-op experience, especially couch co-op games, where you're literally working directly with your teammates and you can't really play the full game unless you're playing with your teammates. You might notice, I said some certain words that have triggered some MMO players, because that's kind of been our experience. The modern MMO industry has been mostly tailored towards you can play solo, and you can jump in with a group or whatever, you can do this, you can do that, and of course I've already mentioned there's tons of options, but because of that there's a lightheartedness to everything, an unseriousness to everything, and so the gamification with your friends and the true interaction with your friends in terms of gaming is kind of just not there, almost. It could be there, could not be there, it kind of almost doesn't matter. Actually, I'm gonna say most of the time it doesn't matter, but that's actually not really the main moral of the story that I wanted to talk about. So firstly though, to answer the question, are MMOs the best games to play with friends? No, they're kind of not, because they can't be, because they have to kind of serve everyone. They have to serve solo players, they have to serve large guilds, and there's a large variety of ways to play them, and MMOs can be great games for lots of people, and you can play with your friends, but specifically as cooperative games or games to play with your friends, no, just like MMOs with any other singular aspect of why you would play them, the answer is no. They're never going to have the best action combat, they're never going to have the best story, they're never going to have this or that some other focused game would have, because MMOs are breathing worlds. But in that same breath, right, that same aspects, double-edged sword, that's kind of why we play them. Because it's a little iffy, because it's a little strange, it's a little weird, it's a little meta, that is why we play them. And some games, they can be rewarding. You invite some friends in, maybe not every friend, maybe not all the time, but every once in a while there's going to be some big event, there's going to be some reason, and you could come away with some memories that you won't get from any other game. So that's awesome, right? Yeah, okay. Even still, continuing on the rant, there's more to it. So basically, even if you had all the stars align, and yes, truly, objectively, you could look at this one period of time for an MMO that has a new expansion or whatever, and all your friends are going to like it and you jump in, there's still a tremendous amount of problems in most MMOs that come about this, especially if we talk about MMORPG, where oftentimes MMOs are, because, they do serve solo players all the way to guilds or whatever, and it's crazy, but these games also serve multiple levels of players, and at the same time multiple skill levels, because there's a difference. You have RPG levels, right? So you have people who are literally stronger or weaker, but then you also have different content in the game that is meant for not just stronger players, but literally better gamers. There's skillful content, and there's content that requires certain gears, maybe certain levels, obviously, as you're leveling through the game. And basically what I'm saying is there's a lot of complexity in MMOs that is a little unneeded. That's kind of fun, as an RPG, as a solo experience, and wandering through the world with other players. But as a friend, playing as a friend cooperatively or right alongside each other, or even competing with someone, if you don't start at the exact same time and play and do the same content at the same time, basically, and just really work directly together constantly, which you kind of can't really, because MMOs are incredibly long-winded, basically you risk somebody doing a quest ahead of you or behind you, you risk kind of having to wait for somebody or power level them, you risk somebody not being good enough in terms of skill level because they haven't played quite enough to actually play with you and do the harder content. That's the same for any game, but then on top of that, you also have, they just don't have the gear. Maybe they are good enough, they just don't have the gear. They just been a little bit unlucky. They didn't play just enough as long as you, even though they are technically just as good. See, this is the thing in League of Legends and Apex and a lot of other competitive games, that doesn't matter. Are you good enough? Can you compete a little bit? Okay, then you can queue together, you can have some fun. Duh. In MMOs, no, you have layers and layers and layers of complexity that is really linear and kind of not needed, actually. Fun for single player games, fun for general RPGs, and can be fun as a solo player, but co-oping with your friends, getting your friends, especially when you say friends with S's, right? When you have multiple people, a whole party together, that's when it gets incredibly challenging and difficult. How many of you have tried to set up, like, make your own guild with a group of friends, run through a game together, and then, doing raids and everything? Even if it wasn't a group of friends, just even randoms online. It is really difficult to actually schedule and get everyone together to do raids, let alone play through an entire MMO, do all the dungeons, do all the content, and then the end game, and then the challenging content, keep everyone together. Guys, it was hard enough for me to be in a band, right, of just 3 people. Being in a band was incredibly difficult. Being a part of a group of any kind for any consistent amount of time is just really kind of... It's a challenge, man, and it's all sorts of fill to fuck. And so when you actually try to play an MMO, which if you've played them, you know what a time sink they are. It's not 60 hours. We're talking over 100 hours of a lot of grind, of doing extra content, seasonal events, some dungeons, a little bit of end game, and then even more so when you actually get into the real grind of the end game and then, playing consistently. How are you going to have everyone playing consistently all at the same time, scheduled together? Things get really weird. And some MMOs have solved this to an extent. I do want to kind of celebrate some games that reward playing with friends, such as Guild Wars 2. Guild Wars 2 has level equalization, was one of the first MMOs to really do it, and the one that brought it to the spotlight, and then Elder Scrolls Online followed suit. And then sure, there's actually some games where levels almost kind of don't matter. They kind of do for customization and how you play the game, but like games like PlanetSide 2, yeah, you can just jump in level 1 and have fun. So there are certain MMOs that really are genuinely good for friends, and I've talked about those before. I will continue to talk about those. MMOs or otherwise, there are good games to play with friends, but I do think in general, massively multiplayer online games, they're really probably, I'm just going to come out and say this, probably best experienced as an individual, as a solo player spawning into a world, and then from there finding guilds, finding players, kind of having those bystander moments or those just crossing paths moments. Maybe you do a quest with somebody here or there, you join a party for a little bit. Those sort of experiences I think are truly what makes MMOs special, especially like the giant open world boss fights and zergs that you can kind of run into. That's really, really cool, but I do think that any other game, I'm talking like Monster Hunter style games or Diablo, I'm talking, just go play some co-op in Halo. There's a lot of other games, obviously couch co-op games, that just really have more emergent gameplay that's specifically tied to all of the mechanics, everything that you could imagine, that detail playing with your friends, literally with your friends, because oftentimes, I'm just going to say it's something that the MMO community has lamented for a while, whether it's playing with friends or even randoms, but MMOs are kind of non-tangible when it comes to actually interacting with other people. You're really more interacting with the game, and then people are kind of just around you. Just more often than not. A lot of the times, it kind of feels like MMOs are just like a chat room. Like it's a game that has a chat room next to it and you can see other avatars around you, but real true interaction with them has been light and maybe even getting lighter with the years. Again, there's some MMOs that kind of break the mold, and there are some really fun ones, and I would love to explore those more. But yeah, in general, even the ones that are kind of interactive, are they still the best to play with friends? Is Guild Wars 2, which is heavily championed as a game to be like the best game to play with friends, is that really? You do have a single player campaign that can be co-opted, unlike some other MMOs. Sure, you do have an open world that is incredibly fun to play with friends. Yeah, jumping puzzles, though, don't really require it. I mean, actually, nothing really requires... Oh, wait, that's the problem. I could actually list all of the mechanics that you can play with friends and that it is fun, but you don't need to play with your friends, and you kind of feel it. So just to leave on the note of Guild Wars 2 as probably the best MMO to play with friends, I think most people would say that's pretty objective, actually. The game as a whole, no, you don't need to play with friends. You kind of feel it a little bit, and in the end, like, it's fun, it's cool, it's neat, whatever. But any individual aspect, for the most part, you could just go and, play Monster Hunter. You could just go and play, this game or that game. But I will say that Guild Wars 2 probably has the best dungeons if you play through it blind. But again, that's the problem. What if I already played Guild Wars 2, which I pretty much have done, and I can have fun, and actually I want to announce, which I already have, but I'm going to announce again, that coming December, we're all going to do a game invasion. We're going to make a guild. We're all going to run through and let's play through the whole of Guild Wars 2. We're all going to play together. But the thing is like, it really is best if you play through blind, completely with your friends. Play blind. If you can do that, it's the best experience ever. The dungeons are fantastic. I really don't think another MMO does dungeons as good, at least an MMO proper. But then again, that's still really just one aspect, kinda, you know, like of a whole MMO. There's a whole experience that goes with that. You're not just running dungeons in this game. So are really MMOs the best games to play with friends? And I think in almost every way that I can think, for almost every MMO, for almost every type of person, actually no. I don't think they are the best games to specifically play with friends, but to make friends, to play to not feel alone, to play to socialize. For a lot of different reasons, MMOs are great, but in terms of taking in real life friends or people from other games and playing MMOs, I think that just in general, it's just something that's incredibly biased. It's something that is an incredibly specific, you know, just based on time, tastes, all that good stuff, the texture of the game. It's completely impossible to really say that it is actually good. You know, like as in, is it the best? No, I don't. I think MMOs are known for being the best games to play with friends for some reason. I just think that's a really, that's just a quantity thing. It's absolutely not a quality thing. From my experience, again, as somebody who is in every way incentivized to probably say otherwise, you know, for the health of my channel, because of my channel, and because of my personal tastes and my freedom. I still cannot find the time or energy between myself and other people to really consume these games how they are supposedly supposed to be played, in terms of being, you know, played with friends through and through. No, that just doesn't really happen. People kind of jump in, jump out, and they're definitely cool games to play, have on a rotation. It's definitely, they're all good B games. And, you know, maybe if you can find the right person, if they happen to also love MMOs, but just blindly, you know, just in general, generically, are they good games to play with friends? Yeah, they're good, but are they the best? No. No, I'm pretty sure they're not. And in fact, if I look back at all my list videos of the best games to play with friends, like best free-to-play co-op games and stuff like that, MMOs are overwhelmingly not the majority, even though the majority of my channel actually is talking about MMOs and playing with friends. It's just there is a miscommunication. There is some wires that are getting crossed with how people play these games, how they're designed, how they're promoted, and kind of, you know, like the reality of the situation of how people play together. Yeah, the truth is most people who play MMOs are introverts, and they are solo players who happen to make friends and join guilds and stuff like that. And they tend to be lonely, to be honest, which is really tragic. But yeah, so there's definitely a difference. So the best games to play with friends is clear. It really is obvious, but it's clearly couch co-op games. You know, like in real time, in real person, couch co-op games are the best. I honestly think survival games come second, which is so funny because survival is so close to MMOs. But it's all the layers of complexity and all the awkwardness that comes with a living world with MMOs, where it kind of also begins to fail. But also that's where the magic is. So playing with friends, making friends, all that, it's really hard to talk about these sort of things. Like, did you make a friend in the game? Because then they're your friends and you're playing the game with them. Then it's a little different, right? So I don't know. That's what I wanted to talk about. There's a little bit of nuance that I think is lost when people talk about these kind of games, and I kind of just wanted to slap it in the face. Yeah, to everyone who's talking about these games, I think we need to judge them a little bit more harshly, because that, you know, in the end, that is the point of MMOs. They are games to play with people, and oftentimes they are promoted to be played with friends. You know, like Guild Wars. And even then, Guild Wars, which probably is the best game to play with friends, still falls short of many, many other games. Like most other games. Yeah, so that's what I gotta say. That's pretty much all I gotta say about that. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. I'm sure you guys have already typed it, but that's pretty much it. Much love, friends and family. I'll see you in the next one.